Rhianna Dhillon, and welcome to the Future Film Lab's The Humanity Factor. So I'm going to be hosting part of today. We have got a really, really good lineup for you, actually. So we have a panel of networking tips. We've got a Hive short of the month. I'll be chatting to filmmaker Jordi Estape about his short Bruno. And then our lovely host, Iari, will be talking to Zoe Rocker about how to use your network to succeed in the film industry. Thank you guys all for coming today. So Future Film Festival submissions are open now. You can find the details on our website, and also take advantage of the opportunity to grab a half-price ticket to next month's Future Film Labs, which is all about filmmakers and the law, and you can get that today only. So go to the box office after today's session. Right now it is time for our panel, so let's welcome them. Thank you. Hi. Hey. So I'm going to get you all to introduce yourselves and just tell us a little bit about what you do in the film industry.
Am I starting? Hello, everyone. My name is Jessica Malik, and I am a producer. I started out in a slightly different area of the industry in international sales. Well, actually in theatre first, but then went into international sales, and now I produce feature films.
I'm Michelle Matherson, and I'm a talent exec in television, and I have some sort of hand in film as well, but it's mainly TV. And I get young people who want to join the industry jobs.
I'm Gharoro-Akpojotor. I produce and I write. Done a couple of features and working on my third, and that's it.
I'm Kelly Knatchbull. I work at an agency called Sales Screen, and I'm an agent for writers and directors and some script editors.
Amazing, thank you. So I want to go back to when you were all sort of first forging a career in the industry. Did you know then what people would be the most helpful to speak to, or were you just completely going in blind, so to speak?
I definitely went in blind.
Yeah.
I got my first job in the industry. I found out about this company called Capital Films, which very sadly doesn't exist anymore. And I was, online looking up about it, and it said, "Oh, production company run by 3 women." And I thought, amazing, I should go and work there as a runner. And it turned out it was a production company in the way that it was a sales company, which is how I ended up in international sales. But I had no idea, no, not a clue.
Mm-hmm. Michelle, was it similar for you, or?
Completely. I was at drama school, and I saw this. Somebody said, "You've just got to contact people." So Limehouse Studios, which was in Canary Wharf, before Canary Wharf was built, and before the internet. And I couldn't type very well on a typewriter; it was a bit rubbish. So I wrote a letter in capitals about how wonderful I was and how they absolutely needed to have me. So I got called into an interview, and I thought, great. And the guy was sat in front of me, and he went, and he had my letter, and I was just cringe. You know, when you just look and you think, oh my God. And so he started to read out. Amazing. Everything, and I just sat there, and he said, "So you're all these things?" And I went, "Yes." He said, "Well, if you are all those things, then you've got the job." So that was and it was a runner for Limehouse Studios, which was a big sort of massive studio in Canary Wharf at the time.
It's a good story.
Yeah.
Like Alan sugared you.
Yeah. How did I start? I just, so I finished uni, and I had this film idea that I wanted to make. I couldn't find anyone to make it. So I just did it myself. I just wrote, produced, directed it. Turns out I hated directing. And then a friend had a film, and he was like, "Oh, could you produce it?" That was literally it. So I just randomly started producing, because I would just find anyone who wanted to make anything, and I would just produce, and some of it was terrible.
But then you say find, so how were you kind of seeking out these people? And
you had Mandy.com, which is not really the same anymore. I think it's and you could I think now you have to only put paid work up there or something. Mm-hmm. But back in the day, it could just be free stuff.
Yeah.
So I used to just produce a lot of free stuff, mm-hmm. and my own stuff as well, because you I think when you start doing it, you just randomly get these contacts at rental houses and stuff like that, because you just do some are really, really bad. Some were terrible, some I was bad at, but I just kept on doing it until probably 2015, 16. Things just started to kick off a little bit more. But that was it, basically. I think 16, I got the mentorship at the BFI Flair program, and that was when my life changed.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. We'll be hearing more about that in a bit.
Potentially less useful because I'm not producing or writing and directing, but I started out in books and didn't want to do film or TV at all. I was convinced I didn't. And then I interned for the company that I'm at now. And I kind of, took other jobs on the side so I could do this internship, and then went off and worked in development, and then they called me and said they have a job here. And I knew I wanted to do it straight away, but the way that I got that internship was, I think Jane, who's the head of the agency, she was recommended to me by one other person that I'd done an internship with. So it's luck and word of mouth, but creating your own luck through sort of hard work.
Wait, did you find yourself? I think nowadays a lot of young people are encouraged to go to networking events like all the time. That we're told that that's how you meet people. So was that helpful for you, kind of on the way up when you were trying to build your sort of network?
You have to talk to people. It's difficult because obviously, I look after a lot of clients who are writers, and some of them are not necessarily the most sort of forthcoming or sociable of people, and they find it quite difficult because there is this kind of stigma that you have to go out and network in order to forge connections. And I think you don't have to be a sociable person. You don't have to go to every party, but you do have to be personable, and you do have to forge relationships, because a film does not get made on its own. It's completely collaborative. It's you can't do it without a million other connections. So it is a really important part of it, and I think the more people you meet, the more luck you create for yourself. So you can pick and choose. I don't think it has to be networking events per se, but I think that certainly kind of taking initiative and going out and meeting people, and everyone knows how difficult it is to get into film. So the way that I got my breaks was writing to people that I really respected and just saying, can I come in for a cup of coffee and pick your brain for half an hour, and 8 out of 10 times they'd say yes, and offer really valid advice. And it didn't necessarily lead to anything, but then slowly over time that confidence builds up.
Jessica, were there any kind of events that you can remember going to where you feel like you actually forged contacts that you might still be kind of using
I was
today?
really stupid about the whole networking thing for about the first 5 years of my career. I didn't do it at all, not at all. I was a runner, and I just used to go home and I would see my friends, and I was really sort of in my own little world. And so it took me a lot longer to pick up that tip. No one told me. You guys are very lucky that someone's told you really early. But then, as I started travelling around selling international film rights, which was what I did for about 10 years, I met all the key distribution companies, the key execs at the distribution companies in every territory in the entire world while I was doing that for 10 years. And that, of course, that's useful now. That's incredibly useful now. Sometimes when I'm financing a film and I'm a little bit short, and I can, phone up someone who's in the Middle East or in Australia or something and say, look, I've got this, and I need this last piece of the puzzle. It's not a lot, and it's definitely worth less. It's definitely less than it's worth. So would you step in? And had I not travelled around and done all of that, I wouldn't know those people. I wouldn't be able to pick up the phone to them. So yes, as it was a little later that I figured that out.
Michelle, I feel like a lot of people must come up to you quite desperate for a job, because that is kind of you're a gatekeeper essentially. So if somebody sort of wants to leave a lasting impression on you, what would you recommend?
I think when people are really sure about what they want to do and they're really passionate about it, and they can give me a little bit of something about themselves that I think, I wouldn't mind working with you. Because half the time it's about who you think you'll work with. And when I interview groups of people, I've just done a group assessment for somebody at 2020, and for a role at 2020. And the thing is that we quite quickly get to know who we think are going to work well together, who's going to work well with the team that we've got, who's going to work well with me, how you come across. And it's not always the loud, bolshy ones who get the gig. It's sometimes those people who've got just something about them. So what would leave a last impression? I mean, you know, a smile, gratitude, and I don't mean like, oh, thank you, but I do mean as in when people give you their time, it's really nice to get a little email back saying thank you for that, you know, that coffee, or thank you for the time you spent, because that's the email. And I know it sounds silly, but that goes to the top of your pile. You go, oh yeah, that person. What was that person's name again? She wrote back to me, or he wrote back to me. So I think it's a case of it's manners. It's being persistent, but in a nice way, and coming across that you really are interested. Some people think that, you know, to get into the industry, it's because you want to be famous and you want this and the other, and it's great. Of course you do. Of course we all do. We wouldn't be in this industry if we didn't want a certain amount of that. But I do think you have to really know what your craft is and what you're passionate about. And even if you don't quite know what your role is yet, you know, because it changes over the years. I started out as a teacher, so it's really far away from where I am now, but not so really, you know, transferable skills and all that. But, you know, I think for you, it's really about understanding where it is, and you're much more it's much more open now as to what the roles are out there, I think, than it was when I was writing that letter with really big capitals.
That word persistent comes up an awful lot when you're talking about networking. Where is the line between being too persistent and badgering somebody, but also reminding them that you're still there? Is there a line?
2 weeks, I think.
Every 2 weeks?
No, I think if you email somebody, you know, if you're chasing something and you chase more often than every 2 weeks, I think it can be seen as a little overbearing.
Okay.
I
But yes,
think also if you're
but no, not every 2 weeks.
Not every 2 weeks. But if you're, I had somebody who said, I haven't heard from you. I haven't heard back from you, and I wrote to you 2 weeks ago, and I think, okay. And then I'll get another one like a day later. Well, you haven't responded to my email. I'm like, whoa. Okay, let me take this one offline. I need to speak to you directly and just say, look, that's not the way to do it, because that will put my back up, and I'm quite a calm person, so. You know, this lot, they might not be. Hackles might come up earlier on, I don't know.
Being from, like, I guess, you're talking about, like, getting mentorship and everything. So almost being on the other side of that, looking for people who might be able to help you out in the future. How have you found being persistent or not has helped you?
I think for me, because I was very much I wanted to produce, but my persistency was just doing it. Like I wasn't kind of waiting for anyone to tell me I could do it. I just kind of did it, and I made mistakes, and you just keep on going. I think that's how you learn anyway. So I think if you really, my thing is to people, when anybody asks me how do I get into film, it's like just do whatever it is you want to do. There's like so many short film shoots happening in London. Some are terrible, but it's a great way to learn what not to do. I think that's for me persistency in terms of just continuously working and learning. And I think through that you kind of also build your network as well, because I think a lot of the people that I know now was just through working on really random shoots and random sets. And that's also kind of how the mentorship thing came along as well, because it just helps build your CV, so to speak. And with the feature that we did, which got me the mentorship, it was a bunch of people that we had met along our journey who were all hungry to make their first feature. So they all did it for like really, really cheap and a free holiday, which also helped as well. Because we went to Senegal for like 4 weeks. It was a free holiday.
Amazing.
But they all came through just working together on a whole lot of free stuff. But I think that's my persistency. It's just keep on working.
Recently, I've seen quite a lot of people, actually quite a lot of women, who are starting their own sort of networking groups because they perhaps don't feel like they're part of the conversation in the film industry. How helpful do you think that is when perhaps everybody is sort of starting from scratch in the same group? You don't really have people who are sort of higher up that you can go to necessarily. How important is that to kind of keep within your own sort of circle of peers?
I mean, I think it's really important to have a circle of peers that you can talk to and bounce ideas off of, but also kind of check in with about the problems that you're having, because it's really hard being a filmmaker, really hard, whether you're producing or writing or directing, and it can be lonely and it can be depressing, and you need to be able to talk to other people about it. And I think, you know, what we look for as agents is someone who has done exactly what you were saying you've done, which is you're not sitting around waiting for an agent to tell you that you can do it. We wouldn't take someone on really until they had, you know, done a degree of their own work that gets them to a level where they say, look, I've done about as much as I can on my own, and now I need some help taking it further. That's not always the case, of course. You know, you take someone on because you think they're talented, but even if I thought someone was talented, I wouldn't take them on unless they had a degree of ambition themselves, because I'm not interested in taking someone on for one project. I want to work with them for a career. That's the whole point that we do what we do. It's about building the relationship with someone for what you hope will be 20 plus years. And, you know, you're not going to take that chance on someone unless they're really in it for the long run too. So you have to be really sure that you want to do it. And I think, you know, having peers that you can talk to enables you to do it yourself, because you'll meet someone that has written a script, and then you'll meet someone who wants to direct it, and then you'll meet someone who wants to light it, and someone who wants to produce it, and in that way having that network is invaluable. So yeah, I think all of those things are really, really good, and shows initiative, people kind of, you know, taking things into their own hands and saying, okay, let's bring people together to take part in that conversation.
Definitely. And people you can grow up with as well, because that's a lot of how my stuff was made, was with working with the same people over and over again, but just from different parts. But a few of us still make films together. And also the reality is, like, in 10 years, these are the people that are going to be working with anyway. So it kind of makes sense to just have a group of people around you who understand each other's journeys, and you can sort of like fall back in each other and grow with each other as well, but also help each other out throughout the way, I think, yeah.
So Joy, you actually began your own production company, Joy
Yeah.
Productions. How did you use your contacts to get something that's, I mean, actually very personal, very like incredible, actually, off the ground?
So like the whole company thing, I really figured out what I was doing last year with my life. I mean, I knew what I was doing, but it kind of just clicked last year, because basically with the BFI Flair have a mentorship program for LGBT filmmakers, and they pick like 6 people a year, and they give you a mentor for the year. And I got Ben Roberts, who runs the film fund. And so it was just a lot of, I had a film idea which is like I'm making now. And when I first went to him, I said, I have this idea, I want to make it. I don't know how I'm going to make it, but just like give me advice, basically. So it was kind of a case study as to how to make a film at that budget. And so a lot of what we were doing was just helping me to understand how I wanted to grow as a filmmaker, but also just how I wanted to run a business. And there's a great course run by Mia Bays called Filmonomics, which is about how to be a producer but sustainable. And so it was like a business course about film, basically. It was a very short course, but a lot of what that stuff just teaches you is just film is a business. So it's about how do you create a business. And so for me, my work is really about visibility. It's about queer, Black, and female-led work. And the mentorship thing really helped me to understand where I can place my films in the good wild world of distribution, I guess. Because I was like, what is distribution? I have no idea what we're talking about. But through the mentorship, it helped me to expand my network. Because, you know, Ben would be like, oh, talk to that person or this person or that person. And it would just be an email, like you said, just ask for a coffee. And then just tell them about who you are. Pick their brain a little bit. Because people are very, like, open to just a discussion. And off the back of that, I think for me, it was just about taking that and figuring out what I wanted to do and how it was going to fit into everything, I guess. So the company now, it's set up in a sort of a SCIS, which is all about, it's basically a tax incentive to help to encourage people to invest in small companies because they're riskier businesses. But the whole idea is that we're focused on queer and Black and female-led work, which gives it a niche, but at least it gives me direction as to what it is that I want to do, and also just tells people who I am. So it's like, oh, if it's not that, Joy won't be interested. So it's easier that way.
Jessica, do you have somebody who you think of as your mentor in the industry?
I've got a few people that I think of as my mentor, but one woman in particular stands above the rest, and she was my boss at Capital Films, called Hannah Leader, and she's a lawyer, and she's been in the industry forever, and she's a producer, and she's just an extraordinary woman who has done everything. She's seen every horror story. She understands everything about everything, and she's very discreet. And if there's anything I'm ever a little unsure about, I always call her.
So it's not always a case of having to find, kind of get mentorship almost like as a prize, or as it can be anybody from your life who can give you advice, or.
I mean, she's an amazing lady, but she's also, she's worked very closely with amazing writers, producers, directors, cast. She understands how things work, and that it's a people industry. Essentially, you're working with people and creative people, which can sometimes make things a little less straightforward than, say, working in the banking industry. There's sort of, there's characters and personalities to take into account within the industry, and some quite, what's the right word here? There's some quite specific personalities that are specific to this industry, and passionate people who have to be navigated in certain ways. And having somebody like her who's been in the industry for probably over 40 years, she just knows about everybody. She hears about things, and I think that's the other thing to remember in this industry is it's very small. Actually, everybody talks to everybody. If you turn around and if you behave badly in the industry, it spreads like wildfire, and it's and that's why it's important to just maintain a certain level of kindness and. Really kindness, be kind to everybody. It's such an important and simple thing, along with gratitude, And she taught me that very early on.
And you recently produced leading lady parts.
Yes.
Which you might have seen viral video going around, which was
so
funny, right? It's amazing.
Such a fun day.
So you're bringing in actors just from all over the industry, actually. So
that was an insane month of my life. It all came out of the Time's Up Me Too meetings.
Yes.
So the Time's Up meetings were happening, and there was a lot of private meetings that were going on around town. They were the ones that were hosted at the BFI, but in people's houses, actresses were opening up their houses and having people round for coffees and discussing ways in which we could change things. And a group of actresses and a writer-director called Jessica Swale got together, and I think it was Felicity Jones and Gemma Arterton and Jessica Swale were all sitting down just saying, we need to make something. We need to make the point by making something. If we don't make something, then we're filmmakers. We should make something. So Jessica Swale, I believe, went home that night and drank an entire bottle of red wine and wrote the script in one night and sent it to us the next day. And it was so funny and so brilliant and timely. And we just said, okay, let's make it. And then we started calling around various different actors that we knew that were friends of friends and supportive of the whole thing, and tried to figure out when everybody was available, which was an impossible feat. So instead, we then, 2 days later, said, no, we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to make it in 3 weeks, and we're just going to make it. And so we set a date, and anyone who could come that day committed to it. We had no money and no real idea of where we were going to make it. And then it just sort of started piecing together. And it's interesting because you were talking about, your peers. The people who ended up financing this film were people who were at assistant level when I started. My friend Mary Gabrielle is now the managing director of Hanway Films, and she was an assistant when I was an assistant, and we're very good friends. We've been friends for 15 years. And I phoned her up and I said, I've got this amazing piece with Emilia Clarke and Felicity Jones and Catherine Tate and Gemma Arterton and Tom Hiddleston, and it's going to be nuts, and we're shooting it in 2 weeks and we've got no money. Would Hanway support this? And she was like, send it over, I'll have a read. And she read it and she went, yeah, we'll co-finance it. And that's how it happened, a few other people. So when I actually did start to finance it, we financed it in maybe 24 hours. And within a month,
Wow.
we'd shot it.
Oh my
wrapped
God.
it. Warner Brothers gave us the whole studio for the weekend, which was amazing. And we had our production offices there. Everybody worked for free, for lunch, for, you know, expenses. Nobody got paid a fee for it. And then we had it. We were like, oh, okay, now what do we do with it? We've got this amazing little film. It's 7 minutes long. What do we do with it? And I work in film, so TV seemed a much more sensible route for it. But we didn't really know anyone in TV, so we were going, oh, okay, well, what we'll do is we'll just send it around to the people we know who work in the film side of the TV broadcasters that we know. And we sent it to the BBC, and they said, we can't support this because it's a Time's Up short, and we can't be seen to be supporting any political activism or anything.
Oh my God. The BBC.
Oh, we were so frustrated. And so we got this email back, very polite, wish we could, blah, blah, blah. And then everybody passed on it because it was sort of, you know, Channel 4 were like, this is great, but it's 7 minutes long and we don't know how to program this. And Netflix and Amazon were like, is it the first of a series of 8? And we were like, I don't think so. And so we sort of had this moment where we were like, God, what do we do with this? And then I got on a flight to the Cannes Film Festival at 6:30 in the morning and ended up sat next to a friend of mine who is an exec at the BBC, and she had 2 hours of me, basically just going, right.
So this is where the persistence comes in.
Yeah, and I said, she said, yes, but it's, you know, it's a Time's Up piece. I said, it's not a Time's Up piece. Where has this come from? It's in support of Time's Up. And she said, how did you finance it? And I said, privately, with these people. And she said, so it's got no official affiliation with Time's Up or Me Too. And I said, no, not at all. And she went, oh, well, that's different. And then she sent it on to, you know, Charlotte Moore, who runs the BBC, and just turned around and just said, this is amazing. We need to do something with it. And then she rallied around from the top and got BBC 4 to build an hours programme around it. And then what they did, which was amazing, was they put it out on every single BBC social channel that existed on Facebook, Instagram, TV, Twitter, all of it. And they've got lots of different handles, all with millions of followers. And they put it on every single one of them. And within a weekend, we had 15 million views. I was like, okay, that's how you do it. But they passed on it at first.
I can't believe. So it was like about that transparency from the beginning of where the money had come from, the fact that that was actually a sticking point for them.
I had the head of, what's it called? What do they call it? It's like, oh gosh, I can't remember her name, but it's sort of the person within the BBC, you might know, who makes sure that there's no like political
Policy.
political
Editorial policy.
What's it? I can't remember what she. Compliance. That's it. Hello. And I had no idea she was going to call, and I just picked up my phone. Hello. This is the head of compliance for the BBC. Oh, hi. And so I really need to know. I need to know everything about everybody who worked on it, and really unpick the financing. And are you supporting anything? And I said, and thank you for offering to give it to us, because we couldn't exploit it, because all these actors had, got involved, and we said, if it ever makes any money, we'll donate it to the Justice and Equality Fund. So that was the way in which we got everybody on board. And then they said, well, we can't take it for free because we're the BBC. We have to pay for it, so we're going to give you a licence fee. And I said, oh, great, we have to give that to the Justice and Equality Fund. There was just this long pause on the phone, and I went, of course, you probably don't need to know that. And she went, no. And then we moved on.
That is testament, though, the fact that, I saw it on Twitter, I think, for the first time. And like you say, 7 minutes for like a tiny little video on your Twitter feed. No one watches 7-minute videos on Twitter. And the fact that everyone watched that is really
and we had
something.
So many amazing people that are, idols of ours get in touch, and Reese Witherspoon sent us an email, and I was like, oh my God, it's Reese Witherspoon. She's seen it. How has she seen it?
So born out of passion, that's kind of like their...
Yeah, it was, that was a very unique, probably unrepeatable moment. It just happened to happen. But it kind of shows that even now, I thought I had a pretty good grasp on what was going on in the industry. I didn't. I didn't know. I had no idea what I was doing. Not at all. But I did know the right people to lead me in the right way. And there's a lady at, I think she's at Facebook now, called Anna Higgs, who's like a digital mastermind. She just knows what she's doing. And we started out at Capital Films together. And I phoned her up and I was like, I don't know what I'm She went, okay, you need to speak to this person at the BBC and this person and this person. Here's their mobile numbers. And then you need to speak to these people. And it just sort of, you build the right team for the right project, which is what producing is all about in any event. It's just that I think a lot of people forget that once you've made something, you then have to keep pushing and keep connecting and keep putting the right people together right the way through the release of the film in order for it to have the best chance.
Thank you for sharing that with us. That was really interesting. Michelle, let's move on to you. So you're not only a gatekeeper, but you're also a headhunter. You have all these incredible sounding job titles, which I love.
Very old.
No,
It was really interesting, actually, what you were saying about who you know and your kind of your peer group, because all of you will work with certain people, and you think, you might get the lucky break and be the person who's out there. Don't forget the people who you know. Always keep in contact with your peers. You don't know when you're going to want a favour. When you're working for a company, don't snub the security person or the person who's bringing in fresh water and cleaning the kitchen. You just never know where you're going to meet these people again. Whether it's when you're trying to get into a studio and that same security guard there who you said hello to every day says it's okay, you haven't got a pass, go in. You just don't know. So you really have to keep it from the smallest. It's about being kind, being polite, being respectful, and understanding that where you are in the world now and where you may be in 20 years, you're going to be probably surrounded by the same people that you're sitting in this room with. So it's about making those contacts and keeping them, because how else would you have known if she hadn't worked with the person that she sat next to on the plane? This may not have ever happened.
No, absolutely.
It's simply it's just like that, and the industry is incredibly small. So sorry, and I sort of changed your question.
No, that's fine. You just reminded me, I had quite a similar situation where because I'm a film critic and I was doing just a small junket interview for this film. This actor was so rude to me, wouldn't look me in the eye for like the entire interview, was like slung over his chair, like literally could not be bothered, and it was for a crap film anyway, and I don't know where he got all his kind of arrogance from. And then fast forward a few years later, I'm judging, like shortlisting short films, trying to decide who to give financing to, and I see an application with his name on it. And immediately, it is immediately into the no. But I mean, I read it. It was, again, not very good. But even if it had been, you kind of think, well, actually, I know a bit about how you treat people, and so that's yeah. So that kind of is a perfect example of that. That isn't what I was going to ask you about. It was about when you're headhunting, is it people you know? How do you hear about these people that you seek out? Is it recommendations? Is it because they've come to you initially? How do you find people?
As you mean, so someone will come to me and say, I need a head off, I need a director, I need a producer of this calibre. And then I just get to know really about what the project is and what it is that you want that person to do. It's a bit like it being an agent in a sense. You understand what's needed, and then I think because I've been in the industry a long time, and people have moved from telly to film and back again, and the similar sorts of people around the industry, and you just get to know who's who. And it might be the latest TV series or latest film, it might be the latest factual documentary or whatever, but you just get to know who's making what, who's making those sorts of ripples, and you just approach them. I do it quite a lot. I say, how poachable are you? And they'll say, what are we talking about here? And as soon as there's a little bit of interest, and this happens all the time. You will be poached at some point in your career. You'll be working for a company, and then they'll come and make you another wonderful offer, and you have to decide to take the leap of faith. But I think really realistically it's really about my own personal networks and how I keep in touch with people. It could be through parties and going to the pub, but that doesn't really, I mean, I didn't really start going to the pub really quite late on. Probably older than most of you sat in this room, because that wasn't my world. I wasn't a pub person. Clubs, hello. But I wasn't a pub person. So my sort of, going to dinner parties and lunches and breakfasts and those sorts of things, that's where I started to really get to know people. People now do golf clubs and do some kind of mad things. Are we going off to such and such? We're going off to France again. And you just think, okay, yeah, we're going to France again. But it's not, your own networks of people you need to you need to keep plugged in, and I think for me, it's about who I've kept plugged into over the years.
Kelly, you've got a quite similar. You must have quite a similar sort of trajectory with the people you find, because you represent like an incredible roster of clients. And again, how do you decide to take them on? Do they come to you, or do you?
A mix. So, I mean, we're a tiny agency. There are 5 of us. So we all have to operate on, I mean, of course we have a submission policy where people can submit to us, but you have to have a reference from a course tutor or a producer in order to do so. Otherwise, we would be snowed under with reading and wouldn't have any time to spend on our clients. I think I would, I mean, my first ever client that I took on about 5 years ago, I went to a theatre festival called High Tide in Suffolk, and they had a writing scheme that they'd done on the festival, and there was this amazing writer. There were 10 writers on it, and I read all of the pieces, and there was one writer that I just thought was just beautiful. Absolutely loved his writing. Met him, read all of his stuff, and he'd written about 6 things. And you'd want to see a body of work. So unfortunately, it's not enough unless you guys have made an amazing feature. But let's face it, that's pretty impossible to do. You know, the way that we find people is we just find people who have got a body of work that reflects the fact that they're really keen on doing what they're doing. So they haven't just written one script and then gone out and said, now help me. If they're writers, they keep writing. And they've got a whole host of different types of scripts to their name that they can show me and we can talk about. Or if they're directing, it's more difficult being a director, because, you can't just pick up a camera and be a director, because there's money attached to doing that. But, you can be really proactive, like Joy was saying, and you can group together and, look, now, last year there was, something shot on an iPhone, which made it through to, I think, the final of LFF Short Film Festival. So, I think there are ways of making it happen, and I would always look for someone who is incredibly proactive, and that doesn't necessarily mean going out and networking if that's not who you are. You can't pretend to be someone else that you're not, but you can be proactive in different ways. You can join social media groups, and one of my clients, I swear to God, gets all of his work through Twitter.
Really?
And I just do his contracts, that's it. I mean, he just literally people write to him on Twitter, and then he starts these conversations, and then he wrote an article for a book called The Good Immigrant, and that literally happened from a friendship out of Twitter. And then from that, someone's asked him to write a book. I mean, stuff happens, but you make your own connections, and I think sometimes a lot of young filmmakers think that getting an agent is the be-all and end-all, and that nothing's going to happen until you get an agent, and that just is just not the case in any way, shape or form, because by the time that we take people on, they are really doing exciting and important things on their own, and that's when we kind of come in to help you guys get to the next stage. But as I can only take on a few people a year because we're so small, I won't take someone on unless I know that they're really serious about doing it and that we can work together, because that's where the exciting part of it is, and that's a relationship too. So, the relationship that you have with your agent is really important, but above and beyond, your relationship with your producer is the most important. And if that's a friend, then even better, especially if that's a friend in your peer group and you're growing together and you don't have any clue what you're doing. But that's part of it. And we still don't know what we're doing, any of us, do we? So, but
it sounds like you do. It sounds like you do.
Always learning. No.
And that's the secret, is that no one knows what they're doing. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how helpful that is, but I think the important thing to remember is to just be proactive and believe in yourself, because no one else will if you don't.
That's a good bit of advice. Do we have any questions for you guys? If you do put up your hand, there will be a mic. Do you have a do you have a question? No? It's, one sec, there's a mic just coming.
There's a question at the back as well.
Do you think it's compulsory to have social media to get into this industry?
No.
No?
No.
Oh, interesting.
I'm terrible at social.
Really?
No, lots of my clients don't have it. I think we have it to promote our clients, so we can do it for them. But no, personal connections are by far and away the most important, so don't worry about that. It's a useful tool.
Yeah.
It's one less thing you have in your arsenal, I guess. But if you're not a social media person and it feels uncomfortable to you, personally, my opinion would be don't force that.
What do you mean by social media? What are you talking about?
Just like, because a lot of networking these days is through social kind of channels. So I just kind of wondered, would it be in this industry, because everything's becoming kind of adapted to that aspect. So just networking and general stuff like that, I just wondered.
I think it's important, actually. I think it's
Definitely important.
Yeah, I agree with Kelly. I don't think it's a be all and end all, but I do think it's important to have, because a lot of people, it keeps the costs right down. And when you have websites or Facebook pages or other, Instagrams or whatever, I'm not allowed to go on Instagram. My children told me not to. But you operate via that, so and it's kind of cheaper for companies to get things on a particular platform, so that they know they're getting access in everyone. And you'll probably get directed, don't contact me directly, go to my whatever page it is, and you'll go to it and you'll see a world of other people there with the sort of similar experiences. So I don't think it's something you should dismiss, but maybe just choose the one that you think is going to suit you best. And not have hundreds and hundreds of groups, but just have a couple of specific ones that you want to be part of.
Sorry.
No, go for it.
I was going to say, are you talking about, are you a writer or a director and thinking about...
Yeah, I was just kind of generally, because it's something that I don't really use, and obviously I want to write and direct hopefully in the future, but I just wondered, is it kind of course it's kind of an asset, but I just wondered, is it significantly harder without it?
I think there are certainly groups. I mean, you should engage in groups online, because that's really helpful. And you can find like-minded people and maybe hear about an event that you want to go to. And I mean, I presume you heard about this through some kind of a social media. So you're obviously enough tapped in that you know about stuff like this. I don't think you can't be a Luddite and just sit there and not engage in the world, because it's all online now. But I personally don't think you need to have a big Twitter presence or a big Facebook presence as a filmmaker and be able to be a filmmaker. That's something that I personally feel you don't need to do. But I very much agree that some kind of engagement is helpful, especially if it's you seeking out engagement.
All right, thanks for all your
also
answers.
depends upon your character, I think. I work with Gemma Arterton quite a lot on projects, and she had a social media presence and found it to be very unhealthy, and now has none, and had to take that out of her life. So, I think social media is great if it's helpful for you, and if it gets to a point where it's unhealthy for you, then leave it.
Thanks for the question. There's just a lady just behind you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing all that really useful information. I think my question is directed at Jessica and Joy. So I have a project that I'd like to pitch, I have a project in mind that I'd like to make, and I've got a very minuscule budget. I want to find a decent-ish space that looks kind of nice to shoot it in. How would you suggest I maybe pitch the project to this space to kind of get them on board with very little money to offer? Anyone?
You take this.
I'll take this one.
Joy knows the answer to this, I'm sure.
It depends on what's the project about.
So the project is, my work is about a satirical look at my experience as a black woman, as someone who works in the arts and film industry. So it's about, I'm shooting some stock photos of my experiences, and I want to shoot it in an office space, but somewhere that looks like an office, not kind of some of the spaces I've seen are kind of very run down and community spaces, which are great, but I don't know if it would be cost me more to kind of hire someone to do lighting. I'm trying to cut my cost by finding a space that kind of provides everything I need, instead of kind of bringing in lighting and all of these extra bits and accessories and stuff.
I mean, I would say there's a couple of theatre venues.
Yeah,
you can always pitch it as a diversity project. It's all about inclusion.
Don't knock the words.
Is there more money in that if you kind of...
Well,
are people more willing to help?
Feel a little more obliged.
They feel obliged to help if it's it's
if
about, diversity or...
Got no money.
Got no money, I'm trying to spread the word. You just got to know how to pitch it a little bit to kind of
Make it happen.
Make it happen, yeah. I would say that angle could help. And just chuck in a charity name.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be true. They don't know. You're a student. It helps all the time. You have no money.
But you must have friends who work in an office. Do you have friends who work in offices who have proper jobs?
Yeah, I didn't
Proper
think. Yeah, thanks.
We're all coming from a world of not proper jobs.
Yeah, we're really not in proper jobs.
Still winging it.
But sometimes it's a case of asking, and
Yeah.
some people get quite flattered if they've got a, an accountancy firm and it's quite boring and they really want to, and then you say, look, you're coming in with cameras and you're going to shoot such and such, they might be like, oh, and what we'll be able to get, it might be that you just cronk something in there
And
about
if you're
that.
shooting over a weekend.
Exactly,
they're
a
not
weekend.
No one's
Yeah.
there.
And it would be a few. Maybe I think if you're friends, definitely. But if you want a theatre venue, there's some smaller theatres that are very happy to help.
That's
And if you're just honest about what you're doing, they really are just like, yeah, cool.
The Pleasance in Islington
Yeah.
has a lot of rehearsal spaces that could easily be dressed as an office, and they're very supportive. Definitely use the diversity card.
And also
And Bush Theatre too.
and Tallowa, because Tallowa are a black-focused theatre company, and they have
Yeah.
lots of links to actual spaces.
Okay.
So just ask them.
Is it a film project, by the way, or a photography project?
This one specifically is stock photos, but I'm working on a film that's going to follow that kind of same kind of story, which is a satirical look at being black in the workplace.
Interesting.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Joy. Diversity.
There was a gentleman just,
Hi, so I had a question about Mandy.com, which you just mentioned, but that changed a bit. So do you have another website that you could recommend for someone like me to find work or other people?
What
to
are
do
you?
project with?
What are you?
I'm an actor. Yeah.
I mean, I think on Mandy, the film Mandy, I think it's Mandy Film. I think they still have a free section. I think. I have no idea now. But I just use Mandy now. Or I used to anyway. I think it used to be filmcrew.co.uk or for actors. I think Mandy owns it. But if you type in film crew or film crew, it will take you to a site. But there is still a free section. It's like a post, it's like a notice board section where there are some free stuff. But also because they're all about paid jobs now, you can actually just get more paid jobs on there, acting gigs, and go for auditions and stuff. I think it's a website.
I think Production Intelligence has a free section as well that tells you all of the. You can cheat a little bit. You have to pay for a full subscription to get all of the information, but they'll give you like the first bit, and you get the production company name in that first bit, and you can just do your own research on that.
Yeah.
But it will always tell you the upcoming projects, and then you can get in touch with places like Shepperton, where they have huge studios, where and Shepnet is this like big production group that runs out of there, and they're doing, a movie every week. So that's another route in.
What's that called? The last one? I didn't.
Production Intelligence, and then Shepperton Studios. Shepnet is the big.
I think they do casting calls on IMDb Pro as well if you sign up for that. And Equity. Don't Equity have?
But I think IMDb Pro is a subscription you have to pay.
Definitely, but
Yeah.
it's got it's got
And
casting
Spotlight,
calls
but
and
again,
Spotlight.
you have to pay for that.
Yep.
Casting
That's right.
Call Pro.
Those ones.
Thank you.
let's just go, next to you.
Hey, I think my question is kind of following on from what you just said, but I was kind of looking at it in a bit more detail. So I spent a bit of time out in LA with my friend who lives there this summer, and what I was just shocked about was like the level and speed of progression that young people can get films made out there. And just, like within a day, finding a red cam operative for £100 a day or £50 a day from these specific companies that people use, very much more than sort of a factory turnout, but, really useful, especially if you're on a low budget, or who to find and when. I don't necessarily know where to go for that in the UK. Is that what you just mentioned about film crew? Is that like, you'd find
you can find DOPs who have their own kit and who will do you a deal. Like there are a few. When I first started out, the DOP that we used, he had his own stuff, but he just didn't have enough credits. So we used to just use his red camera, so he could build up his credits as well. So that there are a bunch of DOPs who. And most DOPs have great access to renter companies because they either work there or whatever. So you can, most DOPs can get you a good deal on cameras. And nobody really ever pays full price for cameras, to be honest with you.
No.
I think rental companies know that. They just like try, but nobody ever pays full price for it.
Apart from the studios.
Yeah, apart from studios.
Studios pay the rack rate.
The
Everyone
rest of
else
us will pay like whatever we can get off. But I think
whatever we can afford.
Yeah.
We have no money.
But I think you can get DOPs through Film Crew Pro, I think it is, who also advertise on there as well.
Is that a subscription or is that?
No, there's a free section where you can just literally like look through the people that are on there already, because everyone's got their profile on there, and you can contact them directly and just speak to them. And most of them have their showreels up on board, yeah.
And do you find like that is a lot of trust in just like meeting people on there? Because personally, like I don't know anything about sound engineers or like if I
They'll
want to
know
do
people
something.
as well.
Yeah.
And one person that you get along with, and
Yeah.
they'll be, oh, what about this person?
Yeah.
What about this person? But also, you don't necessarily need a red to make
No,
content
of course,
anymore.
absolutely.
You've got something in your pocket you can
Yeah.
make a film
Make
on if you
content,
want to. You know, you guys are living in an amazing era where you
Sure.
can make films on your phones and your iPads. We didn't have that when we all started out.
Film.
But everything, was film.
It was film.
I'm working with a director at the moment who said to me, "Yeah, so I've been speaking to Kodak. I want to shoot this on film." It's the sort of film. It's almost we've gone too far the other way. But you guys can make stuff on your iPhone.
Yeah.
And if you're a bit worried about the person, just ask them. I don't know, ask them about the last person they worked with, and ask that person for recommendation. Just like get a reference and just see.
That's a good idea.
If they were-
Wouldn't think to do that in a kind of informal setting.
Yeah,
but
We do that all the time.
Yeah.
all the time.
All the
That's
time,
not
asking
recommended.
people, what do you think of this person?
Yeah.
What do you think of this person? Oh my gosh, my location manager is busy for about a year and I don't know who to go to. Got any ideas? And you get recommendations. That's the way of the industry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, there's a chap next to you. That's nice and easy. And then a guy at the back.
Hi, I'm a writer and an actor, and hopefully a producer at some point. I was just wondering, so I remember you saying something about start just making your own movies and stuff, but would you recommend like focusing on one element to start with? Because obviously I'd like to write and act. So if I was writing and producing, would you maybe recommend not acting in that film?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just focus on one element.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, because I write and I produce, but I kind of focused on producing for a while just because it's a lot. Like, I mean, I think either stuff is a lot in the beginning. I think you just got to like do one for a bit. I'm like, if I like that, okay, cool, and do the other bit. And then in the end, you can just bring them all together once you kind of know what you're doing. Because I think with writing, you've also got to be able to let your work go at some point in time. But I think it also comes from learning, producing, and understanding that, like, different people have opinions, but you don't take it personally.
And
I
different
think
people have different skills.
Yeah.
So once you've written, and it's really hard handing over your writing to a script editor who you might think, oh, they're not going to understand what I wanted, but that script editor is absolutely going to know what's needed for the screen. Absolutely, it's going to need to, and so you have to let it go, and you have to bite your tongue sometimes because it does change, but it's changing because there are so many other people involved in that process to get it from your thoughts to actually what you see on screen. But as far as I agree, you shouldn't be in it if you're writing and producing. I think it's the disciplines, the performance stuff is really hard to do, and you see it. You see people who are the star actor and they're also the producer. You look at it and you think, because no one's telling you that's shit. Everyone's telling you you're wonderful, you're amazing.
Because you're the producer.
Because you're the producer and the star of the show. It's really good to just take a little bit of a backseat and have faith with the people that you're working with.
There was a guy at the back. Might be easier. Yeah. Far right corner.
Gosh.
I know.
I was just wondering about, this is more towards Joy and Jessica, but after you've, more when you started out, after you've finished the film and following on the process, what ways were you able to get it out there? Because obviously once you've got a visual, you want people to see it. And when you're starting out, I know, Jessica, you mentioned how you got the BBC to, they put it, to pretty much broadcast it and get it out there.
They did broadcast it.
Sorry, like on their Twitter and...
No, they went out on BBC 4. That was one of the conditions.
But yeah, like, especially when you're independent and you're starting out, how do you get it out there? How do you get the people to see it? Who do you go to? Do you pitch it to like independent?
I think it's really difficult when you're starting out. Actually, I think it's really important to do the type of schemes that Joyce did with the BFI, because actually you need to find the people at the film festivals who are going to help promote your work. Especially, are you doing a short or something? Is that the intention at the moment?
I've been working on a few different things, but my it's quite niche. It's not more. It's more. So I started off with more music and lookbooks, and I'm trying to work more into film, but it's not a specific. It's just more general.
Okay, it's difficult to be general because there are sort of well-trodden routes to where you would take a short film project. For example, there are on BAFTA, if it were to be a short film project, on BAFTA they list all the film festivals that they consider to be BAFTA eligible festivals, and that's a really good place to start. And the Oscars, the Academy in America, do the same thing, and that gives you a list of the different festivals and the dates at which you can submit them. And really, a lot of the work that we find, and I'm sure, Kelly, the work you find, and Joy, it comes through the film festivals. That's where you generally tend to find the new talent. If you can make something go viral, amazing. It's really hard and needs a lot of luck and a lot of support. And it's, that's a kind of a harder route, but it generally tends to be those sorts of places where you would get noticed, I think.
Yeah, I think putting it through to festivals is the biggest and the best thing. We had a young woman who was a director on Come Dine With Me, and she did come dine with me 24/7. She did come dine with me, and then she took a big chunk of time off and came back and was kind of a bit, I don't know if I really want to do this now. I'll just edit produce. I just don't want to actually be shooting now. I just want to edit produce. And we were thinking, okay. She ended up winning an Oscar for her short film because she was working, doubly hard, day job, which was tough anyway, and then concentrating on her directing and producing for this short film, which is called Stammer, and won an Oscar a couple of years back. And fantastic. All kudos to her, and she's just gone like this now. But that was through putting things through and being persistent about putting things through to festivals and following, like you said, the right path. So once you've worked out what it is that you want to do, then I think it's trying different paths. You don't have to stick to one. You can try different ways in, but
there's hundreds of festivals, and it does cost money to submit to them. But if you target the ones that will lead you to be BAFTA eligible, or could lead you to be BAFTA eligible or Academy eligible, that's a really smart route to take, because you're going to pay a submission fee for every single one of these festivals. So be smart with the ones, and do your research, because they all have their own strands and their own different ways of programming things. And if you don't fit into any of those strands, don't apply.
Thank you. I think we've got time for one more. Yeah, there's a lady just at the very front. Sorry, I'm making you run all around the auditorium today.
Well, first of all, phenomenal questions. I found so many of my questions were being answered by your questions, so thank you. I was wondering, for directors and producers, I'm a co-director myself, do you see a lot of crossover between the advertising world and film and TV? Because I'm building up my body of work on branded content pieces and adverts, and I was wondering, and they're more on the narrative side, and I have an interest in eventually doing film and TV, but do you see that it makes sense to just get good quality body of work built up, or focus solely on film and TV if that's what you want to end up doing?
Okay, there's a slight sort of snobbery. When I'm looking at CVs that are coming through for TV and film, and people have a lot of branded content or corporate, there's this sort of feeling that, oh, that's only 6 minutes long. They can't possibly make a 30-minute or an hour. And there's this sort of, I don't get it, because I think if someone's condensed and made a story and narrative in such a short space of time, what's to say that they can't double that and make that something longer? But there is this snobbery, this mismatch. I think if you want to go into TV, then jump ship. You know, take your branded content and push and open the doors in TV. If you want, I think film's probably got a much more closer correlation, I think, because the filmatic qualities of a commercial or an advert is probably more akin to, you know, a good short film. So that I think there's much more of a match there.
Which can be really useful, actually. You know, a couple of the people that I know who needed to work on the sort of commercial side in order to just pay the rent. They were being really smart about it, and they would pick something and they would pitch for this particular production of a commercial, and they would get it, and then they would sort of use the kit for an extra day and shoot something, because you've got someone else paying for it, so you might as well shoot something that's a narrative short in a day or in 2 days and actually just make use of it and end up with your own short out of it. And you can sort of use it in that way, but yeah.
Are you wanting to get into specifically TV or film? Do you have a...
Well, you know, I'm a co-director with my sister, actually, and so our style is more narrative storytelling. So the branded content and adverts that we are doing have that thread. So I think you know, it's helping to you know, practice our own film skills, but. Yeah, I am interested, though.
I mean, a lot of my clients, TV and film, do commercial and branded content as well, because it pays much better. And it's just, you know, it sustains them. Because if you're writing, unless someone's commissioned you, which doesn't happen at the beginning ever, you know, you're just you're writing for no money, and obviously you have to sustain yourself. So nearly all of my clients, when they start out, have other jobs, and if it happens to be in content or commercials or advertising, it's great, because it is well paid, but also it's kind of it sits alongside it very, very nicely. One, you know, as Jessica was just saying, which is great, but there are really clever things that you can do. And one of my clients, just as an example, was pitching through work for TfL, a campaign that TfL were doing, and he pitched the idea that it would be a short film, and he made a short film with a very small budget, but TfL kind of had all the camera gear, and he had all of the TfL crew, so he did this absolutely amazing shot. It was for drink driving, and he made a short film that went and won all the awards and was BFI longlisted and BAFTA shortlisted, but that was through a piece of branded content that he pitched as a short film. And so you can be very, very clever about it. I think you're absolutely right that it's much more akin to film. The leap between branded content and TV, there isn't really one to make. So either you'd have to part ways and say, okay, I'm just going to go into TV development or TV production or whatever I want and kind of start fresh, as it were, but with a great CV. Or you kind of go down the route of saying, okay, I'm gonna do this alongside, and I think it's a call for you guys to make.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for all of your questions. Let's have a massive round of applause for our panel. Thank you. I'm now going to ask you to join the audience and watch Jordi Estape's short film. And I'd like to invite Jordi up on stage to come and have a quick chat with me before we see it. Thank you. Want some water?
Thanks.
Hi, Jordi.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining me. You have an array of seats to choose from. Okay, so your short film is Hive Short of the Month, which is very exciting. And this was, Bruno was born out of your uni kind of grad.
Yeah, that's my graduation film from uni, yeah.
Okay, so tell us about how this came to be.
Well, I moved to London 3 years ago, and all the films that I've been doing or I've been writing are about pretty much distance and how you're like far away from home, or you're trying to find a place to call home. And I didn't want to do something very cliche or something very normal in London or anything. So I kind of like inverted the story, and I thought, what if I find a character that goes back to the place where I call home, which is Barcelona, and he kind of like tries to find, well, like just feel like at home. So it was the same message, just inverting the roles a bit. And I had different stories, different real stories from people that I knew, but Bruno's one was the one that was most exciting. It's a real story. Well, kind of, it's inspired on a real character that my aunt used to work with when she was a therapist. So that's how it came to life.
And in the spirit of today and about networking and everything, tell us about how collaborative making Bruno was. Did you have sort of like that we were talking about your peers at university that you wanted to work with?
Not only in university, so we work with a lot of people in my university, people from different courses. So we have, I used to do the film course, but I also sound designer from TV. I had people from editing and post-production. So inside our unit, we collaborated with a lot of people from different disciplines. But I usually also needed help from people back home. So I've had a production manager from Barcelona, the composer also completely different. He's living in Liverpool from Barcelona as well. So we had to collaborate with a lot of different professionals to make it happen. The producer is an architecture photographer, which is a friend of ours that was very excited about the trip to Barcelona, but he also produces architecture films. So we were like, it's probably a good idea if you produce something internationally. So yeah, it's a different crew.
So was everyone really quite willing once you kind of put that conversation out there, when you kind of proposed the project? Was everyone sort of on board immediately, or were there any sort of persuasive conversations you had to have?
It was more difficult to persuade the cast than to persuade the crew. I think crew is very excited if the script is okay or is at a standard. I think it's easy to attach crew, especially if it was a grad film. The cast was a bit more complicated.
Why?
Because we aim it quite high for Barcelona, so we try to get people who. So the main character, Francesc, is got a Goya, which is like the BAFTA, but for Spanish people. And then we aim to attach people, so using Francesc, then trying to convince other cast members, which have some TV and film credits, to get to the project, because that's the only way it would stand out in Spanish festivals. So yeah.
What did you think the kind of biggest challenge was with making Bruno? So many.
I'm not sure what the biggest one. I think the biggest challenge for me as a director was to write something that would make sense on screen when you've done it very few times and always at a uni, very like practice, like small projects. But this had to be a film and it had to make sense. So that was a big challenge for me. But I had lots of support from my tutor, who kind of like acted like a script editor, like trying to help me put together something that would make sense later. So probably that's what was most difficult for me.
Okay, brilliant. I think we should watch Bruno. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me on stage, and thank you so much for sharing this with us.
Thank you so much.
Let's go watch it.